Yeah, let's check out the Nigel Farage interview. Check this out. What a propaganda piece this was. It's an heroic appearance.
From the moment in 2015 when he announced he was going to run to become US president, Donald Trump has been in world news. He's dominated world news.
It's already funny. Look at this facial expression. It is already absolute and pure comedy.
Every day for 5 years, all over the world, it was Donald Trump has said this. Donald Trump is alleged to have said that, and what other people said about him. Yet something very odd has happened. Since the beginning of this year, outside the United States, he's virtually disappeared. Has he been silenced? Is it voluntary? What is going on?
No, people are thrilled he's gone. That's what's going on.
Well, today, we're going to find out. We're going to break that. And the first big foreign interview that Donald Trump has done, this is Trump Speaks to the World with me, Nigel Farage, here on GB News. Good to see you.
Well, I didn't know I was so quiet, but if you say so, that's okay with me.
Yeah, and I wonder...
What on earth?
Is that because of social media to a very, very large extent?
I don't know. I mean, I have not heard that, but it's possibly so. I have a lot of things to say, and sometimes I want to say them, and sometimes I don't feel it's appropriate to say them based on the position. We had a great election. We ended up, it was a rigged election, unfortunately. We got more votes than any sitting president in history by far, 75 million votes. More than 12 million.
It's already out of control, I know. And if Nigel Farage wanted to be taken seriously, he could ask for even a shred of proof for any of these claims.
That we had from the previous election, which was...
Instead, he's nodding. Nigel Farage is nodding at the lies.
63 million votes. I think we've said a lot about a lot of things, and certainly there's a lot to talk about if you look at what's going on in Afghanistan with the withdrawal, which was, I think, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And
no, not quite. Not quite. I think there's other competitors in the game.
You look at our borders, what's happening with our borders. You look at the cost of energy. We were energy independent. And
do you guys notice how Trump does that? You look at our border. There's like the sniffs are interjected in a very particular, unique way.
We no longer are. You look at so many different things. You and I could talk all day.
Yeah.
And it's a shame what's happened to the United States.
But we've not heard you through.
Whenever Trump says it's a shame, it's a lie. Okay. So when Trump tells a story prefaced by they came to me and they said, "Sir," it's almost certainly a lie. When Trump says, "and it's a shame," it's also it's a tell that he's lying. Also, when he's speaking, it's a tell that he's lying.
Through Twitter, it was for you, something that you used to massive effect. Oh, Jack Dorsey is being removed as CEO of Twitter because of shareholder pressure, but whether that means...
It's funny because it's not even Trump who's doing free association. Nigel Farage is jumping back and forth between completely unrelated topics as well.
They'll improve as a channel or not. I mean, I was amazed the day that the Taliban, you mentioned Afghanistan a moment ago, the day the Taliban took over Kabul, I did put out a message that said it seemed ridiculous that their leadership was still active on Twitter, and yet you were still banned.
Well, they were wrong in what they did, and we're dealing with the United States president, who's obviously a popular president based on everything that you see, and
what?
Them and Facebook, and I think they made a big mistake. I think if they had it to do over again, they wouldn't be doing it. We get the voice out. We have to do it. We have an obligation to do that. But he's leaving. I guess it was probably enforced because they're down. And also, there's no excitement on Twitter anymore.
Twitter is down.
As I understand it. There used to be a lot of excitement. Not only me, conservative people are leaving and being canceled. So they can't.
Trump left Twitter. That's interesting.
Canceled, they're leaving. And in my case, we used to get tremendous interaction with liberals and everybody else. And now they just say it's a very boring place to be, Twitter. It's going down. The numbers are going way down.
No, they are. On the election, as you said.
I like how Farage just they're absolutely going down. Are you talking about the stock price, number of users, amount of engagement, number of tweets? I think to the average American audience, Farage sounds like he knows more because he has a British accent, but I think he may be nearly as incompetent as Trump.
You say you got 11 million votes more than you got in 2016, because we know what happened. 29th of February last year, I was with you backstage at CPAC, and I thought he's going to win 40 states. I mean, things were looking...
Anyone who thought he was going to win 40 states is an idiot. Didn't Tim Pool put out a video saying Trump was going to win 49 states as if it was a serious political analysis? Like, listen, when I did my prediction of Hillary versus Trump in 2016, I got like a couple states wrong, and that was the difference. And people excoriated me for years saying, David, you should never comment again because you got the election wrong. The people saying he was going to win 40, 45 states, that's not even remotely plausible.
Terrific. The pandemic hit. And then you kind of got criticized from both sides. Biden said you were xenophobic because you closed the borders. You said we don't want foreign air travel. We don't want this virus being brought in. The other side said you didn't lock down hard enough. I mean, difficult in a pandemic to win as a president, as a leader. But the real effect...
Really? Because a whole bunch of world leaders were reelected on the basis of their handling of the pandemic. So it's obviously, it can't be that hard to win.
Of course was, for the first time ever in America, tens of millions of ballots being sent out through the mail system.
Well, they use COVID, or the China virus, as I call it, to rob and rig and steal an election. And they sent out millions and millions of ballots. Nobody knows where they went in so many cases. That was a disgrace. And everybody knows it. You look at even polls now, a big percentage of our country knows it. And it's very...
Yeah. For people wondering, I believe this is the relevant Tim Pool
in 2016, Nate...
Let me see if I can actually find it. Hold on here.
And it's betting odds. Now, I know betting odds aren't a guarantee. It's just what people think, but therein lies the point. If USC Dornsif is saying wisdom of the crowd is a better indicator, ladies and gentlemen, behold. From DraftKings election pool, only one state thinks Joe Biden will be president. In this tweet...
Oh, this is different, though.
They say with over 350,000 entries, a majority of people in every state besides Colorado predict Donald Trump will be the winner of tomorrow's election. Now, predict it doesn't say the same thing. They think the odds are favoring Joe Biden. But why then is it that predict it is giving...
Okay, I actually don't think this is the one where Tim Pool says he thinks Trump might win 49 states. Okay, let's get away from that. Let's get back to that. That's not the clip. Let's continue here.
Very bad for democracy. Very, very bad for democracy.
The problem was in so many of these states, because they'd never seen it before, kind of what they did in collecting the votes wasn't against the law, and that was part of the problem.
Well, but they didn't get it approved in many cases by legislatures.
Now, remember, that's not necessary. We've talked about that many times before. It is not. There's nothing illegal about Secretary of State or making decisions. There's nothing illegal about that.
You have to, so therefore it is against the law.
It's not.
Wasn't approved by state legislatures. You know, you can't do it even through a court. You can't do it. It has to go through the legislature.
That's not true. That's very much
untrue.
untrue.
The legislatures didn't approve this stuff, and the courts didn't have the courage to take it up.
Right.
And so it's an interesting situation.
That is all a lie.
But
No, it is.
we'll see how it all ends out.
I mean, a lot of Americans, as you rightly say, a lot of Americans are genuinely concerned about election integrity. And I have to tell you, from my experience back in the UK, mass postal voting, leads to the wrong results very often.
Absolutely.
Wrong.
Automatically, by the way.
It's a bad
They
system.
cheat.
It's a bad
automatic.
system.
I mean, they put everybody on the millions of people on the honor system.
This is
there's
so
tremendous
stupid.
cheating with that. And, they've done studies on it. Everybody knows it. Every study comes out, you can't do it.
And it's a
Through the
shame.
mail. You can't do it. These mail-in ballots are a disaster. Whether it's your country, whether
Yeah.
it's the USA, it's,
here's
it's
the
an
problem.
open invitation to cheat.
But here's the problem. I've seen some pretty extensive private polling that suggests that up to 20% of your potential voters and supporters feel so demotivated by the message that it's been rigged, that it's not fair, that it's not just.
That's interesting.
That in Georgia, for example, in that special election, which was the one that tipped the balance in the Senate.
I don't even know if Trump understands what Farage is saying, but it's actually a very good point, which is if you keep telling people it's rigged, they'll be like, I'll just stay home. You might be hurting yourself. Let's see how Trump responds.
There were a number that perhaps didn't go out to vote who would have done because they felt disgusted with the whole system.
Well, they felt the election was rigged, the preceding election, which was the presidential election.
Yeah.
And then when they had to vote a couple of months later, they really did lose their enthusiasm. And frankly, rightfully so.
Wow. So do you guys think Trump understands? Like Farage is saying, telling them it was rigged demotivated them. If you didn't tell them that, they might have gone out in January and you might have won those 2 seats. Trump seems to be saying that's right. They were demotivated by the election being rigged. Like they're kind of talking about two different things, but he seems to be accepting sort of what Farage says. But Trump's it's always unclear what Trump understands.
They had the governor of Georgia did a terrible job. Like just terrible, having to do with.
So he's doing the thing Farage says demotivates voters. He's actually doing that thing.
Election integrity, and yeah, they felt an election was rigged and stolen, and I would say they didn't have the enthusiasm to go out and vote, and I understand that.
So then the follow-up is, well, maybe you would have been better served not to do that.
One other thing, Mitch McConnell did a terrible job because this guy's talking about $600 giving during this troubled time. Giving, and they're talking about $2,000. You don't win elections that way. Now, right or wrong, you just don't win elections that way. So Mitch McConnell was a disaster, and I think that really they did get a lot of votes, but a lot of people were discouraged. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. So
by you, right? And so it's like he's agreeing. He's like, people were very, very discouraged. Yes. What Nigel Farage is saying is you discouraged them, sir.
looking ahead, from here.
Yeah.
Is the message to look back at November 2020 and to condemn and criticize much of what happened?
Yeah.
Or is the message to look forward and try and make sure that weakness in the system can't exist again?
I think it's both. I think it has to be both. We have a base in Alabama, as an example. I had 69,000 people recently show up. Wherever I go, I think I'm getting bigger crowds now at the rallies, and you know the rallies because you've been to plenty of them.
Yeah.
I have the biggest crowds I've ever had. And I think it has to be both, because if you don't study what took place and do something about it, if possible, I think they're going to do something about it. I don't view that as a foregone conclusion. If you don't look back, you really can't look to the future. But I think it's really a combination of both, and very strong to the future, but also it's very strong looking back.
So they're looking strongly at the future, and they're also looking very strongly at the past, it sounds like.
Looking at that very strongly.
Exactly.
People don't want that to happen again.
No, and voter ID. I mean, for example,
Voter ID is very
there's an
important.
overwhelming majority, and it's not just Republican voters, it's Democrat voters who think voter ID makes sense and we've got to have free and fair
Right. If we didn't
elections.
have as an example, if we didn't have what happened in 2020, all of these legislatures and all of these people that are meeting and passing voter ID now would have never happened.
Notice that there's no proof provided for even a single assertion that has been presented in the 8.5 minutes so far.
So, looking back is okay. You have to look both ways, but you can't forget about what happened. And if you did, you wouldn't have all of the things that are happening now happen. And there's some very exciting things. But one of the
What's he talking about when is he saying exciting things about changing the 2020 result? That can't possibly be what he means, right? He doesn't mean there's exciting things happening that he's not still talking about changing last November, 13 months ago. That's not what he's saying, is it? It's not even clear.
The big things is voter ID, and you have to stop the mail-in voting. The mail-in voting is just ripe for fraud, and that's what it was.
Well, I'm keen to look ahead with this conversation. One last point about the past. 6th of January, which is something that your opponents gleefully seized upon, particularly, the social media giants on the West Coast and everybody else. And I know that you were willfully misquoted in terms of what you'd said that day. Because
in many different ways.
No, you were saying go in peace, and I understand that,
Right.
and I get that. Looking back on the 6th of January, was it a mistake to have had that rally on that day?
Well, I didn't have, that was a rally that was there. And if you look, it was a massive rally with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I think it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. And I reverse it. The insurrection took place on November 3rd. That was Election Day.
Oh, God.
And before and after. That was, to me, the insurrection. And the January 6th was a protest. But if
Right.
you would have looked at the crowds.
That's some revisionist history there, huh? That is something else. Oh, thanks to Sincer for signing up via Twitch Prime. Appreciate that. I can't think of any better day than today to re-up those Twitch Prime subs. Second day of the month. Also, thanks to Rex Motes, who just signed up at joinpakman.com with the coupon code OBAMNA. New member number 24. Very, very much appreciate that. People are saying there's a Dylan Burns clip about me. Links aren't allowed in the chat, but if someone can figure out how to get me that, well, I'm glad to look at that if we have time. Let's continue.
Nobody wants to talk about that. I believe it was the biggest and most people, and I've spoken to very big crowds. I have never spoken in front of a crowd that size. Nobody ever talks about that. And
nobody ever talks about it. You've been out of office for almost a year. People should be talking about your crowd in Alabama.
Then, unfortunately, some bad things happened, but also the other side had some very bad things happen. And add this, I offered 10,000 and suggested 10,000 National Guardsmen. We want the National Guard to be there, 10,000, or even the military, because I knew the crowd was going to be massive. Because
that, I have seen no evidence that what he's saying right now is true.
I knew the anger that took place over the election being rigged, and I understood that. I understood it better than anybody. And Pelosi and these people turned it down. We would have had tremendous security, but they turned it down.
And that would have stopped people going into the
that
Capitol.
would have stopped any problem. Absolutely. They turned it down. Also, as you know,
So I guess Trump's version of events is it was Antifa and BLM who did January 6th. The real riot and insurrection was November 3rd. And Trump actually would have prevented Antifa and BLM from rioting on January 6th. I guess that's the message from Trump.
The police, I guess they say, were not given proper instructions by Capitol Hill, which is Pelosi. They were given some very bad instructions. So if you look at what happened and go back and really study it, they were so angered and so upset. And so, people crying. They were so angered by it. Now, if you lost the election, people don't act that way. But they knew that we won the election.
No, that's why they were acting that way. Because they lost.
And they went there. But to me, the real insurrection, if you look at it, took place on Election Day.
Now, either way, we've got Biden and Harris in office, and they've got plummeting poll ratings, and we've got a border crisis, as you quite rightly said, law and order, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is now becoming increasingly, I think, political, don't you?
It's shocking that it started off, with pigs in a blanket, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
You know the expression, fry them like bacon. And that was about our police, our great police. And all of a sudden this becomes mainstream? I don't really think so. And Antifa, bad, very bad.
Bad.
And they had
Antifa is bad.
Antifa in that rally. They had Antifa leading a lot of people on that day on January. And I will
no evidence of that either. I mean, not that I need to tell you guys, but
say that it's pretty incredible that nothing happens to them. But the other side, this has been going on for many years.
So they're not just about racial equality then.
Well, I think they're about politics, but I think they're about a lot of other things. If you go back to their original founding and what they were saying, kill the police. What they're saying is kill the police.
I know.
And that becomes mainstream. Not good.
No, not good. We've seen specimens of it, of course, over in the UK, and we've
yeah.
seen Churchill's statue defaced and all of these things.
Well, you saw Churchill's beautiful bust.
When the Churchill bust was defaced, it was just like what happened on January 6th, guys.
Being removed from the White House. When I got there, I said, send it back. They called, would you like to have the bust of Winston Churchill, a great one, right?
Yep.
Even you would say that,
Yeah,
Nigel.
absolutely.
And I said, I absolutely want it. Explain. And as you know, President Obama, I believe, sent it back. He didn't want it. And I said, let's bring it back.
No, well, Joe Biden got rid of it on the first day. Which
did he? Oh,
yeah.
No.
Which is why, of
Not
course,
surprised.
there's been no advancement with trade deals and all the rest of it.
Why would you do that with Winston Churchill and you're trying to get along with your country and you it's such a token, but such an important token. No, I had it back For my entire time,
Oh,
it
man.
was there. I looked. He was a very handsome man.
He's a very brave man, too. But Biden, G7. Biden turns up at the G7, and this was before he let everybody down in Afghanistan, and which leaves us wondering, where is America in the world now? I mean, we've got big threats, haven't we? We've got a lot of Russian troops on the Ukrainian border.
Yep.
We've got China, ever more bellicose in their statements about Taiwan.
All right. I mean, have we kind of seen enough? I think we get the picture of it. We get the picture of what it's all about. And I have a YouTube clip out about it. I don't know that we need to do the full thing. We're ready to move on. Okay. Yeah.